Good evening, everyone. My name is Devin Soper. I am the director of the Office of Digital Research and Scholarship at University Libraries, and I'm here with...
I'm Kelly Grove. I am one of the STEM research and learning librarians. So that means I'm usually over in Iraq when I'm obviously not working from home.
Yeah, and so we're here tonight to speak with you about curating your online scholarly identity, and specifically the Open Researcher or Contributor ID, or ORCID, for early career researchers. Kelly and I are both very informal presenters and would love for this to be as engaging and interactive a session as possible. So if you have questions about anything that we're talking about, or you see an application to work that, your own work that you want to share, or really anything at all, feel free to raise your hand. All right, so just to start with some learning outcomes, that's always a good place to start. We want you to leave this session with an understanding of what ORCID is and how it can benefit you as an early career researcher. Um, Ideally, we're going to blow through these slides and have some time at the end that would for you to sign up for your own ORCID ID if you wish. And we'll be on hand to answer any questions that you have about that. And then also we're going to touch on the benefits of authorizing organizations like Florida State University as trusted parties on your ORCID profile. ORCID's many things. It's a research identifier technology. It's a persistent identifier for individual researchers. It's also a nonprofit organization that maintains all of that, promotes the identity technology, works on integrations with systems used by institutions, funders, publishers, and we'll get more into that later. But at bottom, what it allows you to do is distinguish yourself unambiguously from other researchers. It's very common, academia being a global endeavor, and as big as it is, for researchers to have the same name, even in the same field, and certainly it's very common across fields. And that varies, depending on how common your name is, but it's certainly a common experience. So ORCID provides you with a unique persistent identifier that distinguishes you from other researchers. It also, as I mentioned, is sort of like it's like an online platform and sort of profile system that allows you to sort of manage information about your academic career, everything from your employment to your education to your works, grants, even down to your peer review activity. So again, we'll touch on those sorts of different categories in a moment. And also to get credit for your contributions and affiliations. That's sort of where the authorizing organizations as trusted parties comes in. As we'll see, a lot of this metadata, as we like, or just information about your achievements and activities, can be automatically added to your ORCID profile by organizations like publishers or institutions. So for instance, if you were to claim your ORCID profile and add FSU as a trusted party, then under education, where it says that you're studying, toward whatever degree at FSU, there would be a line for a source, and it's sort of like a verified, the organization has verified that that information is accurate. So that can be a benefit as well. And it can allow you to, this is really, in many cases, the most compelling argument for ORCID, is that it can allow you to save a lot of time. As I mentioned, those sort of automated linkages with publisher systems, for instance, means that after you publish a paper, if you provide the publisher with your ORCID ID, the information about that publication is automatically added to your ORCID profile. You have an option to, to remove it, of course, but you can set up the system so that it automatically adds, and that is already in itself saving you a lot of time compared to having to key in that information yourself into ORCID. The other thing is, because it's so interoperable with other systems, you can then take the data that's been automatically added to your profile and push it into other systems. So they're working on affordances for using your ORCID login credentials to log into different systems, and then it can automatically pull some limited set of information about you from your ORCID profile and sort of pre-populate that into the system that you're logging into. So there's a lot of time-saving efficiencies that ORCID brings to the table. And I've rushed or well ahead, so some of these slides are going to be not so relevant, but that's okay. It's a persistent identifier. This is sort of what it looks like. You're seeing on the side right now an example of an ORCID identifier, and it's formatted as like a URI or URL. So it works as a hyperlink to the HTML representation of your ORCID record. It also helps, and I didn't touch on this, with changes in your sort of name and career, location, that kind of thing. It used to be the case before ORCID that if you changed your name, for instance, or for any reason really, that was often a detriment to your sort of like scholarly reputation, because you developed, sort of a following, for lack of a better term, or at least like a reputation amongst peers in your field. As a scholar, and people were familiar with your research, if you start publishing under a different name, then that kind of fractures that. People, you maybe lose some of the reputation that you had gained. So by using ORCID, it really doesn't matter. You could change your name as many times as you like. At least from a systems perspective, there's still one unified record that is capturing all of your accomplishments. That's one of the advantages of it
Can I
being
throw something in there real quick,
Yeah,
Devin?
go for it.
This also allows you to publish under different names. For example, if you choose under certain journals, you publish first initial, last name, and then other journals, it's your full name and any combination thereof. It will all be associated with your ORCID ID.
And that is a great point, because, as you might be familiar, like many publication venues insist on or have different conventions for that kind of thing. So in some cases, you're sort of forced to use or different name variants. So this can help with that too. So I mentioned that the ORCID ID is a hyperlink. This is an example of what one looks like. And now I'm going to jump out briefly. This slide, you can see sort of an empty ORCID profile. We decided it might be more helpful if we just show you one of ours. So I'm going to click on the link to my ORCID profile. And it's fine to just look at it as this is sort of like what an ORCID profile will appear like if a public or a member of the public or a peer or what have you happen to access it. So you can see I have information about my employment, my education and qualifications and works. I don't think I have much more than that in here. Although as you saw on the previous slide, there's lots of options for other kinds of information that you can put in your ORCID profile. You'll see I have a duplicate here. I noticed this when we were prepping for this presentation, but left it in here just for instructive, in case it's instructive. In this case, I had two different sources pushing this information about my latest publication that Kelly and I published to my ORCID profile. And so it's easy enough for me to log in and delete one of these, but you can see in both cases, they have like a verified source that this information is coming from. The publisher, in the case of the one I'm hovering over right now, University of Alberta Libraries, and also Crossref itself, which is a persistent ID registry for digital object identifiers. So moving back over into the presentation, you can see that there's a wide variety of other kinds of information you can add. You can have, and a lot of this has been added since like fairly recently. They're continuing to extend and expand the kinds of information that ORCID can accommodate. So now you can add information about invited positions and distinctions, if you were an invited lecturer or something of that nature, or indeed even invited or written work, articles, and that kind of thing. Your membership and service. So, service is a big part of being an academic. You can add that there. Obviously funding works, and I mentioned peer review as well. Okay, and now I'm turning it over to Kelly for the next section.
Great. So what I'm just going to kind of cover real quick is your visibility options. What's great about ORCID is you have control over what people can see. So highlighted in that red box, it indicates your visibility options. So obviously the little kind of green person that's currently clicked would be anyone's visible. The key icon is you can set specific people that can view specific portions of your profile. And then the lock is pretty much everything's kept down. Only you can see what's in there. So as I just said, a trusted party is only me. It's really great. You have control. So if you register your ORCID profile, but maybe you don't want to have an empty ORCID profile until you've published, you could always lock it down to where only you can see it. But I will say it makes you a little harder to find. So, having it more available is always a great option. So again, something that Devin mentioned earlier is about trusted organizations. So what he was talking about is allowing those organizations to push information to your ORCID profile. So as Devin pointed out, he had one from the journal itself and one from another citation database saying like, hey, we think this is you. You should display it on your profile. And then you can have the control of saying, yes, I would like to show this, or no, this actually maybe isn't me. And so by allowing these trusted parties to work, it is showing that, you're working with these people, you're recognizing that you have this affiliation with them. So university publishers and grant funders, they are all a lot of them are starting to actually require ORCID IDs. So when you associate with them, then that means that they would, if say, for example, a grants funding institution, you apply for a grant, you get the grant. The grant institution could then push saying like, hey, you got this grant from us, and you would not have to go in and fill in that information on your profile yourself. So it's a really great way to kind of work through that. And again, that red box down toward the bottom is just highlighting that's the University of Virginia happened to push this to someone's profile. So you can always authorize your organizations as a trusted party. At the end of the slideshow, we will tell you that we actually have, at Florida State is associated with ORCID, so we can become a trusted organization. And we have links to where it's easy for you guys, if you haven't already registered, you can become associated with FSU very easily, very quick. But this is another great way. You can always look them up. Different institutions can request, and it's a very simple, you just authorize or deny it, quick, easy clicks of a button, and these pop up in your profile. Again, under your account settings, it's just going to show you who has it. So the more you publish, the more you maybe get grants, and the other organizations that you work for or maybe study under will be able to control. And then you can even control their access type, such as like maybe you only want your schools that you attended to be able to read your ORCID profile and not push anything to it. You have control over that type of information, all from ORCID. You can even do trusted individuals. This isn't something that we have done a whole lot with, but perhaps one day you become a dean and you want to have your assistant be able to update your ORCID profile for you. You can, instead of giving them all your login information, you can make them a trusted party, and then they would be able to do all those updates for you. So something else that's really cool about ORCID is because everyone's given this general identifier of all of these numbers, it works globally. So if you are fluent in other languages, as you can see in this example, using the non-traditional alphabet that here in the US we are used to, people can also say like, hey, this is also my name. This is what I am also known as in different areas of the world. So don't be afraid that this is just a US thing. No, it's being used globally. And then Devin, I'm back to you.
Yeah. So this infographic is really just trying to, I don't know, express visually the things that we've been saying all along. Really, this is kind of like plumbing for the research enterprise. Oh, okay, and hold on, LMS question. Is there a way to link our ORCID data with our Google Scholar account? Would that be advisable? That's a great question. There's certainly a lot of import and export tools that ORCID has available. I've never tested exporting Google Scholar profile account data.
I'm
Kelly.
checking that right
Okay.
now.
Kelly's
Hold on.
I'm sorry, I'm just gonna pop in and say I have my ORCID and my Google Scholar accounts linked.
Awesome.
But my accounts then both talk to each other, and you can also, I do it like Mendeley as well, but that's a whole other thing.
Awesome. Thanks for confirming that, Denise. Yeah, generally speaking, ORCID has been very proactive in focusing on interoperability. That's one of the things this slide's meant to communicate, and it has been sort of like latent or implicit in everything that we've been saying thus far. Like most large research universities have ORCID memberships, and have the ability to sort of like push that either employment or education data to employees or student ORCID profiles. Lots and lots of publishers, certainly I would say all of the big ones, are also working with ORCID, and some of them, as Kelly was mentioning, require you to, or either require or at least provide an option for you to include your ORCID ID along with your other, personally, or like your name and affiliation and so on. Funders are increasingly working with ORCID as well. Okay, so another question: how difficult is it to enter older information, old writings and presentations? Kelly, I heard an intake of breath. Were you going to respond?
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say it's very easy. When you're ready to enter new works, they have, it's a little populated field and they're like, hey, where's the title? Where's the publication? And then they even have some options where if you have something like a DOI, a digital identifier, sometimes you're able to just plug that in and then it can go and grab the information and put it in there for you. So lots of different ways to do it, depending on, if it's something older or something new, you're able to get a lot of that information in.
Yeah, and we can, demo some of the tools that are available. I will say that, like, to be totally honest, the ease with which you can add things to the profile, to your ORCID profile, does vary somewhat depending on the age of what you're trying to add and also the discipline that you're in. There are, by discipline, I would say there were, sort of different waves of journals adopting, for instance, like the digital object identifier, making that a standard practice that every article gets a DOI. If there's a DOI associated with the research output, then it's super easy to add that to ORCID. If it's sort of pre-DOIs, then it can be a little bit more tricky. And in some cases, like I know Kelly and I have worked with people where it was just like you kind of needed, if the data wasn't already available in another system that you could like export it and import it into ORCID, then you kind of are left with manually entering it in some cases. But that again is really only for your research that is of a certain age, and again that sort of depends, varies by discipline. So I already mentioned that using ORCID can help you to save time. That can be everything or anything from using your ORCID ID to log in, to sort of you can use a print view. I don't necessarily recommend this, but there's an option to click print view on your ORCID profile and sort of print that and use it as a CV if you wish. If you just need to like quickly generate a CV and you're not too fussed about presentation, then it might be an option. This tweet on the slide is sort of just illustrating something that I already mentioned. Another one of the sort of time-saving efficiencies. A lot of this is now, especially for research that you're working on now and in the future, it's automatic. Like there's definitely no question of importing and exporting data manually, or let alone manually keying information into your ORCID profile. As long as you provide your ORCID profile upfront when you're submitting a manuscript for publication or a grant proposal or what have you, and as long as the organization has, is interoperable with ORCID, then you will all that information will automatically get added to your ORCID profile. So that's a great sort of time-saving efficiency. Yeah, and as Denise says in the chat, it is really nice to see those emails when they pop up in your inbox. And like this notification said, usually it works so quickly that often you get that email from ORCID before you get the email from the editor or whatever the case may be that your article has been published. So in terms of like, the 1, 2, 3 here, the sort of quick overview of how to get started with ORCID. It starts with registration. That's really easy to do just at orchid.org. You can go /editor or register if you want. And then you want to populate your ORCID profile with data. And we can, do a demo of what that looks like. There's just a few clicks once you have created your account to use one of their import wizards. And they have wizards for a lot of different databases and organizations, everything from like Crossref, which is one of the main DOI registries, to like the MLA, International Bibliography, and on and on, many other options there. And that's sort of a process of like, you give them you add your known aliases, the different names that you have published under, for instance, to your ORCID profile, and then the wizards sort of look at that and then generate a list of possible papers, for instance, to add to your record, and you sort of go through the list and click the ones that are relevant. And then, as I was mentioning, using your ORCID ID, providing it wherever you have public information about yourself and your work, and also whenever you're submitting papers or applying for grants. Registering for ORCID's really quick. Yeah, we'll see more about that. But yeah, don't be intimidated about registering for ORCID. And you have lots of options for privacy settings, both at the account level, like if you want to maybe just get started and you don't want it to be discoverable, like while you're adding information, you could start with having it just be only me, for instance, and then open it up when you're happy with that it's sufficiently representative of you as a researcher. Or it's very granular as well. You can just choose to hide specific and granular outputs. Yeah, there are terms and conditions, so do review them. It behooves all of us to be aware of the rights what we're consenting to, especially when it comes to data privacy. I will say ORCID's quite good, but really, like, ORCID is an open, like it means what it says when they call themselves like the open researcher and contributor ID. There is underneath all of this like an open API that's queryable by anyone. So like any data that you make available in ORCID, unless you hide it, like if any data that you use that green setting for public will be discoverable to like really anyone who wants to you query the ORCID API, or also they'll be able to access the profile and view the information on the web as well. So in terms of FSU, the sort of first port of call that we encourage you to go to if you want to register for an ORCID ID and make FSU a trusted party is orchid.fsu.edu. The page kind of looks like this. There's a little bit of information about ORCID, then a big create connect button. And if you click on there, there's a series of, if you basically just keep clicking, it'll take you to ORCID and have you sign up and then prompt you, give you the option to add FSU as a trusted party if you wish. Over to you.
Basically, at the most basic level, it's recommended that you fill out your any and all names that you publish under, or that you use, your most recent employer, education, and any recent works. But the more you put in, I mean, it just looks impressive. Everyone likes to feel good. But you can always go back. You can make changes. You can, if you decide you had something in there that maybe you actually want to take off, you can do that. And adding works, like we were saying, is fairly simple. When you're on the ORCID homepage, you are able to just click that add. Devin's gonna sign in for us, but basically what will happen is there is an easy add works button. So this is the editable version of Devin's profile. And so if he goes up yes, he can delete the work that one of the copies of works that he had just by, that little trash can. But if he clicks that add works, he has a variety of options that he can choose from. So he can search and link. If he has connections, perhaps you're in the medical field and you have a PubMed ID, you can search articles through that PubMed ID. You can import if you by chance, you have a Google Scholar account and you have works in there that you would like to import, you can export that as a bibtex and upload it that way. And then there's that add manual button. This search and link is really neat because it allows you to search all of these different platforms. You can search your name, you can search maybe the title of your article, anything like that. And then it would just pull it from where it is held. So it's a great source. It's very useful. That Crossref is one that Devin uses pretty often, I believe, for his publication, to pull his publication information. What happens when Devin searches for himself, it comes up with all of these possible people that might be that have similar names, that might be him. And what he can do is he can go in and find the ones that are actually him.
Oh, I was going to say this probably won't be the best example because I've added most of the relevant hits. But yeah, I mean, this can give you a pretty good start. And if you do find a relevant result, you can click add to my ORCID and it just pushes it to your ORCID profile.
So as we were saying, it's all pretty easy. When a copy of these slides are available, you'll see on our slide, there's even little demo videos of how to operate these various tools and various ways of doing it. So you're covered. There's lots of help. And then, sorry, these next few slides are that kind of live demo we were talking about. And again, the reason why you have those trusted organizations is it will allow to kind of help push that information out. You can even do automatic updates. In this example, they are working with the DataCite metadata store. I do not believe that is something that we have access to here at FSU, but if you guys by chance go off to other institutions that may have that do have access, you can do these auto updates. To tell you guys the truth, this DataCite update is kind of newer, so we haven't played with it a whole lot. So that's why we're kind of like, I'm not sure how much we have access to it. That is something that can be done. And as Devin mentioned earlier, they're constantly doing cool upgrades and adding new things to ORCID. So it is becoming very dynamic and we're kind of learning the new updates as they come out. And again, this is just showing that quick and easy way that Devin was showing you how he could just add a work to his profile. And then if you click the next slide, it just shows you where that was pulled from. So it's very quick, very easy. If you guys are not in an area of work that is relying heavily on your works being a journal article, for example, you do have the option to add in different types of works. So as you can see, things like artistic performance, and you're able to kind of like cite and maybe have links to where those videos might be stored. You can link, data sets, lectures, and speeches. So they're not only collecting the formal journal articles, but books, performances, they're very robust in what they're trying to help you collect. They just might not always be as easy to import if they don't have that quick and easy access to a database or something like what we were just demoing. Again, this is just a quick way to do adding your affiliations when you start working through when you're adding in those types of works.
Yeah, I'd love to go through like a demo of signing up for ORCID. But it's sort of just because I'm already connected and have already authorized, I'm not a good person to demo it. But yeah, again, you would start at this orchid.fsu.edu, click connect, create, and you should be prompted to do your CAS login. And you won't see this because if you're signing up for the first time, because the system won't, like instead you would see a,
It should appear as a link or a button asking you to register for ORCID.
yeah, and then eventually it'll click, you'll see a screen like this. But Ellen, thank you for attending the talk. It was a pleasure it was always a pleasure to share information about this. I'm glad that you learned something.
And we just like to throw this out here. If you already have an ORCID ID, then it's one less thing to maybe have to try and deal with creating if you're working with maybe a major professor on their grant, or if maybe you're at the stage where you're writing your, well, this is the dissertation boot camp, so you're obviously at the stage where you're at least thinking about writing your dissertation. But you could even associate your dissertation with your ORCID ID if you wanted. Devin, if you go to your ORCID profile really quick, you are able to put your ORCID ID into your profile. And so there you can like copy and paste, or they have that wonderful little display your ID on other sites. And if you click on it, they will give you, like the little code to maybe put on a website. If you want to do it that way, you can always, kind of type it out and then put the little icon in there, depending on how you like to work with it. That's really great and really handy for displaying it wherever you so wish. You could even, heck, if you wanted, you could maybe put a little ORCID ID on a poster presentation if you wanted.
And this is what the CV export kind of looks like.
And again, thank you guys so much for coming.
Yes, thank you. And best of luck with your dissertations and all your future academic endeavors.
Yes. Remember, libraries are your friends.